And
Uh,
we are live. Welcome, everyone. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Haseeb from Dragonfly, and our amazing founder, Shashank. How are you guys?
yeah,
Doing good.
uh, doing well. Can't hear Adil probably, but anyways, really appreciate Haseeb showing up here. I've been following your content for a long time, especially your recent post on how to start a VC about AI agents, and we'll be going through it in no time. Just to intro to our listeners, Haseeb has been around in crypto for a long time. He is the founder of Dragonfly in the current form, as we found out through the crypto Twitter debate. He used to play poker professionally before he came in as a crypto VC. Haseeb, happy to hear it from you. How has the journey been from professional poker to crypto?
How has the journey been? Geez, it's been a very long journey. Crypto has a lot of ups and downs as a profession, as I
Mhm,
think we've all come to learn who've been in the space for long enough. But it's been an incredible education. Like,
mhm,
especially being now seeing, at the time that I got into crypto, crypto was probably the fastest moving technology that I had ever seen in terms
mhm,
of going from being a toy back in the time of when it was just Bitcoin and colored coins and, all the little Bitcoin forks into then the rise of Ethereum. And then, you saw the second generation of smart contract chains, the rise of stable coins, seeing the rise of DeFi and everything that we now associate today with the mature ecosystem that crypto has become.
mhm,
Seeing all of that play out in real time and seeing it disseminate through the world, I think I've learned so much about how technology disseminates, especially how weird technologies end up affecting culture, end up affecting geopolitics, end up affecting the way in which something as staid and traditional as money and finance can
mhm.
change in the span of, just 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Seeing that has been a really good training ground for realizing how to think about the next technology that is probably going to be even more disruptive, which is
Mhm,
AI. I mean, we're now seeing it play out in real time. Basically since 2022, which was when the launch of ChatGPT happened, it's just been this explosion
mhm,
of an increase in capabilities and seeing how the diffusion of this technology through our lives and the way in which it's changing the nature of work and the nature of thinking, the nature of knowledge, the nature of search, all that stuff is happening right in front of us. And I found that it's incredibly useful
mhm,
history to draw upon, to be
mhm.
thinking about how is this technology trend going to play out, and is it going to happen similarly quickly, and is it going to happen in different ways? So it's been a tremendous education. I'm very grateful for having a front row seat to it.
Yeah, great. And we are grateful for having you because of that. By the way, did you get started by actually buying coins or just because of the tech, like going through the papers or seeing how different that technology was, being able to reach consensus without depending on a centralized authority?
So I bought my first Bitcoin back in 2015.
Hmm.
So I bought it earlier than came into the space. I came into the space full time in 2017, and
Hmm.
it was really with the DAO hack
Hmm.
and then the advent of the um, the ICO boom on Ethereum that I really started to pay closer attention to the technology layer and not just the like, oh, okay, Bitcoin is this kind of, in my mind, Bitcoin was this call option on chaos,
Hmm.
and that seemed like maybe a good financial investment at the time, but not necessarily an obvious technology that was going to transform things.
Hmm.
And it was only really with the advent of Ethereum that I came to realize that this was much bigger than what I originally thought it was
Hmm.
going to be. And that's when I went really deep into the technology.
Yeah, and you also mentioned once that you kind of passed on Solana when it came, and it humbled you over time as a VC. So, like, how did that go?
Yeah, so I saw the Solana seed round, and the Solana seed round
No,
ended
I
just
was
like every
asking,
round of
like,
Solana.
what was the reason that you thought it might not become that big? Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, at the time that I was looking at the Solana seed round, we were getting a ton of pitches for these next generation layer one blockchains. And there was a perception. There was a perception I had at the time that it's like, okay, well, there's so many of these, and they all are telling fundamentally the same story, which is that we are going to like create this newfangled consensus protocol that maybe isn't quite a consensus protocol, or is sort of this kind of hack of a consensus protocol. They were all making very outlandish claims. Not all of them, but many of them were making very outlandish claims. I think at the time, if I recall, in the white paper, they were claiming something like 650,000 transactions per second in the Solana white paper. And I was like, okay, this is obviously bullshit. Like, nobody in their right mind who knows anything about engineering would believe that this can do 650,000 transactions per second. There's a lot of centralized databases that can't do that amount of throughput. And it was like, okay, these are a bunch of hardware guys. They're formerly Qualcomm. And the way that they're going to get here is by just kind of cutting corners and massive centralization and these very beefy nodes. Everything about it just felt to me like this is the wrong answer technologically. And I basically did not think at all about the way in which the trade-offs that existed in Ethereum were going to change or be challenged by other chains that demanded higher throughput than what Ethereum offered at the time. And so that, I think, was I think there was a lot of things that I got wrong. But I mean, I was a junior investor at the time, and I think that the overall sin that I made, which is a common sin for junior investors, is to think too much about the technical details and not enough about the big picture. This was a mistake I would make many, many times, and I still make it. But I think there's a blindness to your own cleverness that can easily make you misled as a junior investor, and that's I think the trap that I got caught in. So at that time, I think Solana, it must have been like the 4 cent round for Solana, which would make it something like a 2000x investment from at the time that I looked at it. So it's probably the biggest financial miss I have ever made in my life.
Damn.
Yeah, for those who are watching, I think there's a huge
Biggest financial miss
between
yet.
us.
So would you make that investment if you had all the knowledge that you have right now and wisdom?
Would I make that investment if I had all the knowledge I had now? I wish I could say yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the reality is that very few people made that investment at the time. It was around, and this was also in the bear market that Solana was raising. So I think it was like 2018 after the collapse of the bubble, and then 2019 they raised Series A. They launched, I think, a week before the COVID crash happened. So Solana, the fundraising and the kind of lifespan of Solana happened almost entirely within the bear market. And so it was hard. I think it was hard to say yes to a lot of projects at that time, especially in a crowded space like L1s. So I don't know. I want to think I would be more open-minded, and I probably would have thought more deeply about it. But I think I might be fooling myself if I said that I would have gotten it right today, because it's just genuinely really hard to get all the answers right. I think I would have made much better investments now if I could go back in time. Not necessarily obviously knowing what the answers are, but just thinking more deeply about the kind of founders that I'd be looking for. I think I would have given more appreciation to Anatoly. But it's also I know much more about him today than I would have known at the time in just a single pitch meeting. So I don't know.
Nice. Also, one of the things you talk about is how important just sticking around is. And I've heard the same thing from some really cool founders like Ilyas, Sandeep, Michael, and many more. All say just if you just stay around, keep building, and stay in the market, most of the veterans just go away. They get bored, and you win. You just win by staying. How did you develop that kind of mentality? Like, what were the things you were seeing around that made you come to that, and how it affected the way you invest at your firm?
That's a good question. Um, yeah, it is the biggest decision for anybody um, who has the ability to do other things, right? On some level, there's two classes of people who end up sticking around. One is the people who have really deep conviction and who really believe that, hey, uh, I know something that the market doesn't know. And the second class of people is people who have no choice. And so you look around and you realize like, oh, it's like
Mm-hmm.
the people who are sticking around is like, okay, me, the kind of stubborn intellectual class that's like, no, 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 no. Crypto is definitely
Mm-hmm.
going to change the world. I can feel it in my bones. And then the scammers and grifters who have no other, there's nowhere else they can go because crypto is just too easy. Um, and so you notice that when the bear market comes in, your peers suddenly become
Mm-hmm.
worse because in the bull market is when all the really promising people come into the market, and so it becomes harder to stick through in the bear markets than it is to stay in the bull markets. Unsurprisingly, the thing that I think got me through it
Mm-hmm.
and that gets a lot of founders through it is just
Mm-hmm.
being absolutely stubborn that you're right.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, like this is a common feature of founders who tend to be very strong,
Mm-hmm.
is that they're just convinced that they're right. And at the time, I remember after the SEO bubble collapsed, Bitcoin price went all the way down from 20,000 to
Mm-hmm.
$40,000, and Ethereum
Mm-hmm.
pancaked from 1,200 to double digits. And I remember having a conversation with one of our juniors on the team, and he was just like, "Man, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know about any of this. I don't know if I was totally wrong. We were getting high on our own supply,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just no there." And I remember the thing I told him, which is that, look, are people going to be paying each other with Bitcoin or ETH? I don't know, and there's no way for us to know that. But what's really obvious to me is that what this technology enables is, at the time we were investors into MakerDAO, which was one of the very first decentralized stablecoins. And I was telling him,
Mm-hmm.
like, look, the idea that people are not going to want this product, the ability to have from
Mm-hmm.
any mobile phone with an internet connection anywhere in the world, be able to buy and transmit as
Yep.
many dollars as they want 24/7, 365, there is no way this product is not going to
Mm-hmm.
blow up and grow and take over the world like a weed. Like if you don't believe anything else, you can believe that. And he was like, "Yeah, shit, you're right. I know you're right.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see it right now because at the time, stablecoins were tiny. Stablecoins were like less than
Mm-hmm.
$1 billion. But that to me was just so obvious. It was so obvious that this is going to be a substrate for more and more of finance. That like you're not going to be able to put it back in the box. Like this thing is just out there now. It's just out.
Mm-hmm.
It's out in the world and it wants to exist. And I think for him and for others on our team,
Mm-hmm.
that was convincing enough to say, all right, I'll see it through because
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a world in which that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
While you're processing that, I'm going to blow my nose.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking. Okay, let's talk a bit about agents. So, in one of your talks, probably E Denver 2025, I was probably there. Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. I can hear you.
So, yeah, in one of your talks at Agents Unleashed in E Denver 2025, you gave a definition for an agent. It was anything that can take action. Yeah, anything that can take action is an agent. Um, I would say that's necessary but not sufficient, because suppose I create a very simple script: buy Bitcoin when it goes about $60,000 and sell it when it reaches 80,000. Taking actions is just calling APIs using tools. So if I run that script perpetually, it will take actions, it will execute on that, but it's still not an agent because the actions are still well defined. If I make it slightly more complex, like using a linear regression model or a tree-based model, I can still understand what it does. And when it's going to enter or exit, it takes action, but it's still not an agent. So I think we need a more comprehensive definition that takes account of the intelligence as well. Like, happy to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I certainly agree with you. In order for something to qualify as agentic, it needs some degree of intelligence. Clearly, yeah, just somebody who has a hedge fund and there's some automated trading going on. I don't think we'd call that an agent. And there's also something I think about the size of the action space that we would also think about as what makes something agentic. So it sort of doesn't sound right to say, okay, well, an LLM controls when my lights go on and off. Therefore, I have a lights agent. I think we'd find that to be a little bit of a stretch of the meaning of the term. So something to be agentic, I think we imagine a relatively large action space that gives the agent enough room to be able to exercise its own decision making in a broad way that encompasses potentially making mistakes.
Mhm. Mhm.
If I come on stage, Shashank, your connection is freezing a little bit.
I would say even the action space doesn't have to be large. It could be the state space is large, but it can only take two actions. The intelligence comes into play in identifying which action should be taken and when, based on the right state. So, like for example, an agent that is just buying and selling, but deciding when to buy and sell. Uh, there's a lot of cases, a lot of different states of the market, which coin is doing how, what's the news around there. So that'll take a lot of intelligence. So I would argue the state space, the action space can be small, but the state space has to be probably large enough.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. One way or another, it entails sufficient complexity. So even if you have a very intelligent, if you have a lot of intelligence, but it's extremely constrained, that seems to not be what we mean when we're talking about agents. So you can imagine like a customer service agent. If it is literally just doing something as simple as like using an LLM to label a chat message for high pry, mid pry, low pry, that's technically an action space. It's technically using intelligence, but it's kind of too constrained for us to think of it as truly agentic. Whereas if you have an agent that's talking to customers, we would definitely say that's an agent because the state space of talking to customers is so big because you can tell a customer, hey, we're so sorry, we're going to give you a refund, or we can tell them, screw you, you're trying to scam us, or we can tell, there's so many different things that a customer agent can do that this thing, I think we would think of as really qualifying as an agent, given the fact that it has so much freedom, and I think freedom is a big part of why agents are so valuable, is because we've for such a long time we weren't able to have something that could solve problems as general purpose as agents can. And it looks like Shashank dropped, so hopefully we'll have him
Yes,
joining us
we're
back
just
soon.
waiting for him to come.
Yeah,
A
no
lot of people
worries.
in the comments like are loving this. They're saying, like love this. They're very happy to have you. And yes, his connection is a little bit bad. So like, just like we start and join again.
All good.
And
All
sorry
good.
for this connection thing. It's
Yeah.
yeah. I was actually reading a little bit about your poker studies. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And yeah.
Yeah. So before I got into crypto, I used to be a professional poker player. I did that for about 5 years, from when I was 16 years old until I turned 21. Um, it was a very unconventional way to grow up, I'll say. It's a very playing cards full time, learning how to gamble at a young age. It helped me a lot, I think, in learning to think a lot more probabilistically and also in a more structured way about investing. So I think becoming an investor after becoming a professional poker player is a really great way to kind of, it's a whetstone against which to sharpen your thinking, especially in adversarial environments, which is a large part of what crypto and in a way investing is.
Yeah, I think
Anyway,
it's like
Shashank, looks like we got you back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I just logged out and joined in because there was so much lag and it was kind of irritating me. So yeah,
Your connection seems great now.
yeah, oh, it's fine. Okay, so like coming back to our previous discussion, like we were thinking about how to define agents, like in a more comprehensive manner. So okay, suppose the state is large enough, the action space can be constrained or large enough, but say you can still write it as a directed acyclic graph or like a decision tree on what that agent does. So it's pretty well defined. Would you still call it an agent? Because now you know every action when it takes that action, what's the most optimal move at state. Do you think it still qualifies as an agent?
I mean, if you think of games, right? Games are the quintessential, quantifiable or chartable state spaces.
Mhm,
I think you would say that, like, yeah, something that plays chess is an agent. You could say that something that plays poker is an agent. Um,
mhm,
it's agentic over a well-defined game or well-defined, DAG.
mhm,
So I don't see why not. But although generally, again, the places where the word agent is most helpful is in state spaces that are fairly poorly defined and must be navigated amidst
mhm,
some kind of fog of war, where
mhm,
you don't really know what's going on in the state space until you get there.
mhm,
So that's where the intelligence of LLMs is most valuable.
mhm,
And so when you think about things like robotics, for example, where
mhm,
the robot can just get into a new state that it's never discovered before,
mhm,
and having the general intelligence and the generalizability of an LLM allows it
mhm,
to navigate in a situation that it couldn't just directly model
mhm,
through other forms of learning.
mhm,
That is where having this agentic intelligence is a real unlock.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, honestly, I was uh, pretty pumped up with the kind of advancements we saw across AI over time. Back when I was in college, we used to use AI to play board games or games of Go, chess. But even
Yeah,
there, the state space is pretty well constrained. Even if there's many, the state space is large. Still, it's one board, and it's
that's right.
easy to generalize between states. But in real world, it's huge. It's every new variable makes it exponential. But LLMs being able to generalize even in that is like super powerful. It was, like, great.
Right.
They were able to work out so well. And another thing about agents, you recently talked about how agents are not usable at 90%, but when not even usable at 98%, but as we get to probably 99.998%, it probably starts mattering more. Uh, I would argue that it's not about errors or the percentage of errors per se. It's how much those errors, like the amount of losses those errors need to, lead
The
to.
costliness. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, an LLM could be right 98% of the times, wrong 2% of the times, but only causes losses of, say, 0.1%. That should be more viable than an LLM that's correct 99.98% of the times, but that one loss just wipes you off. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
happy to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was specifically referring to crypto and blockchain
Hmm.
environments where I think there is always the potential for catastrophic loss,
Hmm.
or not always, but in most cases, potential for catastrophic loss. If you're running a customer support agent, I mean, people have been running customer support agents for at this point years,
Hmm.
where okay, if your customer support agent gives a refund when it shouldn't, and you're selling little knickknacks, then
Hmm.
okay, whatever. Like if you refund someone for buying a sandwich because they prompt injected you,
Hmm.
whatever. It's not a big loss. So yeah, there is this element of there are environments where mistakes can be extremely costly.
Hmm.
Poker is one such environment, right? Where you
Yeah.
can have little hands where, you fold the blinds and it's not a big deal and there's a small amount of money in the pot, or you can go
Hmm.
all in
Hmm.
because you hallucinated something.
Hmm.
And though that kind of asymmetry between the scale of losses is
Hmm.
what leads to these sort of vicious environments
Yeah.
where even a small error rate can be
Hmm.
taken advantage of in an adversarial environment.
Hmm.
And that's what leads to, hey, this thing is just not usable
Hmm.
below a certain threshold of error rate.
Yeah. So, do you think that kind of reliability is ever possible through LLMs, or it's more? It'll have to do more with the tooling that the LLM uses. So, for example, if you give LLM access to wallets, you cannot make sure perfectly that it's not gonna go against you, or nobody's gonna damage its prompt or take away your money. But if the tool
Mm.
only allows it to do certain transactions, you're kind of good. Which way do you think it's gonna go in the future?
Yeah, I think it is. What would I say? Look at Meter, right? So
Mhm,
Meter is this benchmark that basically tries to measure, or an organization, I should say, that tries to measure how long of a task an LLM can perform continuously that would take a
mhm,
human an equivalent amount of time. And so when Meter says that Opus 4.6 can do something like 14 hours of work
mhm,
continuously without error 50% of the time,
mhm,
what that's implying is that it's basically doing 14 hours of work without making a mistake.
mhm,
And there was a time early on in the history of LLMs when the answer was closer to a minute
mhm,
or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, right? If you think about, how long could GPT-3
mhm,
do coding work continually uninterrupted? And the answer is, it could write fizzbuzz. It could do some very, very basic programming tasks, reverse a string. But if you try to get it to do anything that takes longer,
mhm,
it's going to make a mistake with high
mhm.
probability.
Yep.
And that, I think that is the right concept space in which to be thinking, which is
Mhm,
just that there is at a certain point of intelligence,
mhm,
there's a complexity level that you will basically never make a mistake.
mhm,
And if you ask an LLM 1,000 times, please reverse a string today,
mhm,
it will never make a mistake. Like
mhm,
literally not a single time. Because today the way we do sampling, you do
mhm,
top K tokens. None of the top K tokens will be anything that doesn't involve reversing a string.
mhm.
Um, so there is a point at which actually there is no more stochasticity. It is not
Oh,
just, oh, well, the error rate's low enough. It's that the error rate is actually zero.
mhm,
So, you ask it who the current president is, it will never answer, Xi Jinping. So that property of LLMs, we should take seriously the idea that there will come a time when the error rate is actually zero
mhm,
on tasks of sufficient size and complexity.
mhm,
Because if it happened for small tasks and is continuing to happen for bigger and bigger tasks, there will come a
mhm,
time when the task of, hey, build me a CRM, that
mhm,
the error rate will actually go to zero.
mhm,
It's not just that, like, oh well, for things above this size it's zero, but after this, like, it's too hard. No, there will
mhm,
come a point where the meter rating is going to be 100 hours or two
mhm,
weeks or one
mhm,
month, that it will be able to continue a job uninterrupted without making mistakes
mhm.
or failing to complete the task. And for if you think about blockchain transactions don't take that long.
Mhm.
They're actually not that complex in
Yeah.
terms of the total amount of time needed in order to execute. And even if okay, not just how do you form the transaction and send it to an API or an
Mhm,
RPC, even just, okay, but what's all the due diligence that you would need to do
mhm,
in order to be totally confident in your transaction, to check the side effects of the state, to go read the current state of the blockchain, to check the DNS records to see if there's been a DNS poisoning attack, go check the Twitter and see if they've been hacked,
mhm,
go read the smart contracts and evaluate whether there's any vulnerabilities that are being actively exploited. Everything you could possibly imagine that would be due diligence, all of that
mhm,
can certainly be encompassed within 14 hours. It doesn't take
mhm,
14 hours to do all that. So it probably takes like 50, 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you know what you're doing and you know what the checklist is.
mhm,
The problem is that the models have not been RL'd to do any of this.
mhm,
There's no blockchain anything in any of the
mhm,
RL pipelines at any of the labs today, which
mhm,
tells you the problem is not so much that the models are not intelligent enough. The problem
mhm,
is that the models have not been taught to do this. They're learning all of this in context. And learning anything in context is kind of like, you show up on the job day one, every
mhm.
single day, you're the newbie on the job.
Yeah.
You're a smart guy, but like literally you're reading the orientation for your job the moment that
Mhm.
you're doing it every single day forever. That's
Yeah.
what we have in terms of models.
Mhm,
And I think when that changes is when you'll start to see that, aha, the error rates actually are really low and sustainably low.
mhm,
And it's not just that, okay, well, we need these harder constraints around models because they're just so stupid and they're always going to be stupid. And so we have to defend them from themselves. I think there will come a time when
mhm.
basically models will never make that mistake in the same way they'll never fail to reverse a string.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how LLMs always seem to get past those theoretical limits. Even recently, Jan LeCun was talking about how for a reasoning model, if it's correct like 99% of the time in one step, then as it takes more and more steps, the accuracy kind of diverges. It's 99
Right.
into 99 into 99, and as the more steps increase, it kind of goes to zero. But we have seen reasoning models; they do really well. I mean, look at Claude Code. The kind of code it writes, like it just works, and it can be super complex, but somehow it still works. So it's funny how we always put those limits, but the kind of engineering that goes into like going past those, it's simply astounding how the models continue to get better over time. So
Yeah, I mean the counterpoint to Jan LeCun is just look at the meter charts, right? The meter charts are measuring what Jan LeCun's claiming, which is that
yeah.
you multiply enough 0.99s together and eventually it diverges.
Mhm.
Question is like, okay, how close is that 0.99 to one? You
Mhm.
multiply enough of those together, and like, yeah, actually, you can get those numbers to be really long. You can get it to be 14 hours. It's an
Mhm.
incredible amount of accuracy for each
Yep.
individual step it takes within those 14 hours.
Mhm.
And I don't think anybody looks at those charts and is convinced by Jan LeCun's argument that
Mhm.
we will not continue to bend those numbers down.
Yeah, and the another funny thing is, it's not that difficult to RL those models on blockchain. You have the test nets available. The environment is right there. You just need to run on top of it, and it should be able to learn. You don't even need to create a specialized environment. Even the smart contracts are there. You can just run them on testnet and make the agents like do it. It should work like that.
Yeah, I mean, you would need somebody to actually build the gym or the environment and like create tasks and have them accomplish tasks and measure their
Mhm.
proximity to accomplishing those tasks. So it's not nothing to do this, but like you're right that it's a perfect environment for
Mhm.
reinforcement learning. It's more a function of which lab is going to decide to do this.
Mhm.
And most of these labs today, they're not building a lot of these RL environments in house. They're mostly licensing them or they're
Yeah.
acquiring them outright.
Mhm.
Um, the ones that they're building themselves are mostly for coding.
Mhm.
And for other things that mathematics, which they have a particular interest in, and that
Mhm.
they're either one they're economically valuable or they're valuable for competition across the labs.
Mhm.
Today, blockchain is kind of this weird orphan in that I think at the labs people are like, well, yeah, this is interesting,
Mhm.
but I don't want to be responsible for people losing a lot of money. Or
Mhm.
for it's like for programming, it's like okay, well, buyer beware. It's very obvious that this thing
Mhm.
might have bugs. But
Mhm.
for blockchain, okay, if I RL on blockchain, I tell everybody I'm RLing on blockchains. Then okay, if this thing loses your money, are you going to sue me? Are you going to like come after me? So the calculus is a little tricky for a big lab because of liability.
Mhm.
And my suspicion is that if they start RLing on blockchains, they're probably not going to tell you that they are
Mhm.
for quite a
Mhm.
while because they don't want to
Yeah.
encourage people to, have these big stories that, oh, Anthropic told me that they're RLing on blockchains and then my model got hallucinated something and sent all my money to, the burn address or something.
Mhm. Yeah, of course. Another thing you talked about agents was how credit economy was something that led to growth of Visa. Um, E-commerce led to the growth of Stripe. So do you think stablecoins will grow because of AI agents, as the AI agents are more suited to use stablecoins?
Yes, I think it'll be obviously one contributor to it. I mean, in reality, stablecoins have been growing like gangbusters without
Yep.
AI agents being able to do anything with them. So I don't think it's quite the same argument in the sense that this thing could not grow but for the rise of
Mhm.
this new technology. I think it's
Mhm.
more that AI agents will be an accelerant to stablecoins.
Okay.
Now, that being said, is that happening this year? No. If you look at X402 volumes, they're very, very tiny.
Mhm.
But I think if you draw the line out over the next, call it 2 to 3 years, that's when
Mhm.
I think you'll start to see it's like, okay, this thing is actually a meaningful contributor to the overall volumes that you see starting to happen on chain.
Yeah, but X402 volumes are not a good indicator of agentic proliferation, right? Because agents can call any API, they can make any transactions. They don't really need X402. It's good for like paying in small amounts, so you don't have to pay high transaction fee. So, do you think there's another way to test it out? How are agents growing on chain?
Well, it's obviously very hard to tell because agents that are not using X402, they don't advertise themselves. In the
Yeah.
same way, it's kind of hard to tell what's happening even with stablecoins. Period.
Hmm.
So you go look at stablecoins and you're like, okay, well, how much of this is happening in the U.S.? How much of this is B2B? How much of this is China? How much of this is Russia?
Hmm.
The stablecoin volumes do not self tag. They're
Hmm.
not labeled, so there's just addresses moving money to addresses. So it's
Hmm.
actually quite hard to get the true north there. And so I
Hmm.
think the reason why X402 matters is not to get a sense of absolute size, but relative
Hmm.
size, which is that
Hmm.
seeing relative growth in X402 should
Hmm.
give you a sense of, okay, some
Oh
percentage of
yeah.
agents are using X402, and so seeing the
Hmm.
relative growth rate should tell you, aha, this thing has
Hmm.
grown 10x or 20x or whatever. Um, the relative growth rates right now are pretty, it's like, okay, they're growing, but it's not like explosive.
Hmm.
And that matches my intuition is that,
Hmm.
I play around with this stuff and
Hmm.
I'm not giving a bunch of stablecoins to my agents. I'm giving them small amounts and playing around with
Hmm.
stuff, but it's right now it's too sharp edged for me
Hmm.
to be wanting to give a lot of money. And every time somebody uses one of these bots that goes like balls long some random shit coin, and they lose all their money on some meme coin.
Hmm.
What was it? It was I remember some guy was posting like there was some viral bot he was using that went 20x levered long on poop coin, and uh, it's always great content when
Hmm.
your agent loses all your money.
Yeah.
But it's not a great advertisement for people to be like, oh great, I want to do, I should give all my money to my agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reality is right now these things are they're for early adopters. They're for people who are experimenting. Um,
Hmm.
and if you give your agent a little bit of money and you try to get it to buy something for you, it may or may not go well.
Hmm.
But it will be very fascinating. You'll someday be part of the training data. Bless you.
Yeah.
Um, and it's I think very valuable just to be at the vanguard for its own sake, and to
Hmm.
continue learning as the capabilities change. The only way you're
Yeah.
going to know that the
Hmm.
capabilities are there is if you are actually at the vanguard, continuing to use these products.
Yeah, definitely. So, did your Cloudbot buy any meme coins, or like, did it lose money, or like, what did it do?
My Cloudbot has only made a few small trades. I do not give my Cloudbot access to leverage,
Yeah.
so that's not in the cards for it. But I had to do some Uniswap swaps, see
Mhm.
what it could do. It kept forgetting that it even had a wallet,
Mhm.
so that was a good reminder of like, okay, I gotta make sure that this is being baked into its prompts a little more prominently.
Mhm.
But yeah, so far no snafus. But I've only given it a very small amount to play around with.
Nice. Now, coming back to stablecoins, you talk about how they unbundle the finance stack, how you can choose features you want to implement, and you don't have to go with whatever everything Visa offers. Another thing you talked about how the growth of industry is in a direction where capital wants to be free. So if you're going in that direction where the natural flow of capital and you enable that, then that's the sector that should grow over time. Do you think stable coins fill that definition because they are kind of the easiest way to move dollars anywhere?
Yes, I think they are, and I think demonstrably, if you give your AI agent, if your AI agent has the freedom to
Mhm.
use money however it wants,
Mhm.
most likely your AI agent is going to choose to use stablecoin.
Mhm.
It's not going to choose to hold ETH or to hold some other asset. And why
Mhm.
not? Because your AI agent is not stupid. It's not ideological. It has no extrinsic goals about crypto or about investing.
Mhm.
What your AI agent wants to do is just accomplish the task you gave it. And
Mhm.
generally speaking, the best way to accomplish a task is to use a stable currency and to go do the thing that you asked for. So it's very likely they're gonna use stablecoins. Now, there's some
Mhm.
people I've seen argue like, oh, but why is your AI agent going to allow itself to be under the thumb of Circle?
Mhm.
Um, and the answer is that again, your AI agent's not stupid. Your AI agent can calculate risk. Your AI agent
Mhm.
can go look at the stats and see that the Circle blacklist set is extremely small relative to
Yep.
all the addresses that hold USDC,
Mhm.
especially in relatively small size. So
Mhm.
the likelihood that your agent is going to get deleted off the face of the earth by Tether or Circle is just so de minimis unless you're doing something that's actually illegal, or extremely risky. In which
Mhm.
case, your agent should be able to figure that out and say, "Hey, let's use Zcash or something else, because like,
Yeah.
yeah, we actually think we're in significant risk of censorship.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you assume that your model is generally intelligent
Mm-hmm.
and can actually navigate risk space, all
Mm-hmm.
these risks are actually pretty transparent. It's easy to
Mm-hmm.
go and look up and just understand the risk model of any of these assets.
Mhm. And it's actually easier for agents to do that compared to humans, because humans get tired. There's so many things to look at. There's so many things you have to do, and you're more probable to make a mistake. That comes to the title of our talk, that AI agents will be the biggest users of crypto. And that's one of the things I definitely agree with. And I believe it's going to change how we interact with crypto, or the nature of industry as it is right now. So let's go one by one how it could, how things could look. So about wallets, the kind of wallets we have right now, as a wallet, you only need private key to sign transactions. But all the UI we see, where you see all the assets, all the protocols you can interact with, that's meant for humans. For
Yeah.
agents, they only need a private key. So do you think we'll actually need wallets, or agent is just gonna have a private key which it keeps safe and interact on chain using that?
I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be both, at least for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the same way in which like you have a credit card, but you also have cash.
Mm-hmm.
And like you kind of want the agency to be able to do things and intercede when you want to, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, you can buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, but sometimes you just want to go to some weird artisanal store and like buy this weird thing yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
not be intermediated by Amazon's algorithms,
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the same way, it's very likely that if you think about like take for example lms.txt. What is lms.txt? lms.txt, for those who don't know, it's a file that often is exposed when an LLM goes to scrape a website. For an LLM to like go to your main page, there's a lot of stuff on your main page that's really designed for humans. It's like it's got
Mm-hmm.
this loading JavaScript, it's got these animations, it's got all this, whatever stupid text just to like advertise something. And for an LLM, like actually that's just a waste. It's like you're just chewing through tokens and making it hard
Mm-hmm.
for me to see what is actually the useful content on your website. And we'll
Yep.
get to a point soon where there's more agents browsing websites than there are humans, in
Mm-hmm.
which case you will really need a separate interface for those agents to be
Mm-hmm.
consuming this content for your website, because more people will be, or sorry, more users of your website will be agents going and scraping it to try to solve some task for their human, than will be humans sitting there clicking and looking at images and looking at your
Mm-hmm.
beautiful text and typeface and logos and so on. So when that happens, one can imagine that lms.txt, which is effectively just like Markdown, right? Which is what agents
Mm-hmm.
like to read, which is just very token efficient.
Yep.
Is that there will be a token efficient representation of everything on the web
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is readily consumable by LLMs. Now, does that
Mm-hmm.
mean that websites will go away? I don't think so, because the
Yep.
reality is that look, when the big boss shows up, right? Like you the human are the big boss. When the big boss shows up, okay, you roll out the red carpet. You show them a very nice animation and the logo and
Mm-hmm.
the this and the that, because
Mm-hmm.
just in case the boss shows up, like you better make sure that you've got nice chairs and you've got a little back office for him, and you can get some refreshments out. Like just think about this is the way that the world naturally works. You are
Mm-hmm.
going to be the royalty of the web
Mm-hmm.
in the future, where all the LLMs are these little worker bees that are running around and doing tasks, and like, okay, for them, we have to be very, very efficient with the amount of information we give them and how to help them accomplish their tasks. But for you, dear sir, the whole 9 yards, we are going all the way to try to show you how impressive a website we are and what a great company we are. And, we're going to do everything we can to signal to you what a big deal we are. So I don't think the website is going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, like, some people who want to, in the era of self-driving cars, a lot of cars will still have a manual driving function, because humans like that. They want to be able to drive the car sometimes. So, at least for quite a while, there'll come an era where no one knows how to drive anymore. But today, at least, and for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a long period of time where people who grew up driving are be like, I like driving. I want to drive when I want to. And so cars will still have steering wheels. In the same way, I think for crypto protocols, they will have a front end, Web3 injection, a MetaMask extension, a Phantom integration that will continue for many years, until
Do you
eventually it
think
changes.
do you think that will be an interface of minority use, and most of the traffic will come from agents, or it's going to be split more equally?
I think it depends on the product. I would guess that for something like Aave, things like low risk DeFi, I would guess way more agents than humans are going to
Yeah.
be using Aave in the not too far future.
Mhm.
Then you think, on the other hand, something like think Courtyard, right, which is
Mhm.
this gotcha game where you can buy Pokemon cards.
Mhm.
Probably there's going to be very few agents that are playing gotcha
Yeah.
games, because it's just not, the value of this thing is for human entertainment.
Yep.
And so, you think of like Pump.Fun. How many agents are going to be on Pump.Fun? Well, there's going to be a lot of agents deploying things
Mhm.
on Pump.Fun, but probably not a lot of them trading on Pump.Fun because
Mhm.
you're probably not going to make money if you're trading on Pump.Fun, right? You're playing as the house, so to speak. Whereas the reason why Pump.Fun exists is for humans to have
Mhm.
fun playing the game, which is trading meme coins.
Mhm.
So it depends very much on what is the purpose of this
Mhm.
application as to how many humans or agents are going to be interacting with it.
And you could say the same for the whole of internet. You could divide it into something for fun and something for achieving a goal, and you don't care how it gets achieved. You just want to get it done as quick as possible. So the
That's
things
right.
that we want to get done quickly, you can say to your agent, just do it, bro. I don't
Yeah,
need to see anything. I don't want to see those purple web pages. Just get it done.
that's
But
right.
for something that's fun, like scrolling Insta, Twitter, we definitely
Yeah.
need
Instagram is going to continue to be mostly humans navigating it.
yeah.
While at the same time, like your bank or,
Mhm.
government services, like all this stuff, the humans are going to go away. They're going to be like, yeah, why would I ever touch that? What a horrible experience. Much
Mhm.
better to have, your tax filings be managed by an LLM.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Uh, I have so much to ask, but we are almost out of time. So let's move on to our rapid fire round. The team has few
Okay.
questions. Even I don't know what they are. So
All right,
let's
great.
see.
Let's do
All
it.
right. So first of all, this was an amazing talk. Everybody in the comments had a great time. And I just want to say quickly that the first two questions are just fun, and the rest are about AI and crypto and everything.
All right. Let's
So
do it.
this is for you. This is for our guest Haseeb. If you had to tailor an AI agent to a famous poker player, which one has the hardest playing style to replicate? Like Phil Ivey, Daniel Negreanu, Gus Hansen, perhaps. Which one has the hardest?
It's got to be Phil Ivey. It's got to be Phil
Yeah.
Ivey. Phil Ivey has a very deep kind of instinctual play style that
Mhm.
is pretty legendary. It's very hard to replicate.
Very
Um,
tight.
if I could go way back in history, I think Stu Unger,
Mhm.
very famous poker player who died very young. Kind of very early days of poker, he was a legend. He had this infamous, extremely chaotic play style that I think would be
Mhm.
very, very hard to emulate today. So I'd love to see an agent try to replicate Stu Unger.
All right. This is for you, Shashank. So in the last live stream, we spoke about Fast and Furious. If you
Mhm.
had to spend a month in a deserted island with one person as your sidekick, would you choose Vin Diesel or Dwayne Johnson?
Batman. Why would I choose those
Fun?
two?
All right. Same thing for you, Hazib.
Yeah, would you?
Deserted
Which of
island.
these two actors would you choose to be on a stranded island with?
I would stay alone, bro.
I don't know
Like,
that actors would be very resourceful on an island. They'd probably,
yeah,
yeah, they'd probably die alongside you
So you have same question for you, Hazib. Only this time, your choices are Jerome Powell or Gary Gensler.
on an island.
Yes.
I'm gonna say I have to say Jerome Powell. I don't think I could choose Gensler on an island. That I think we might have to beat him to death with a stone.
All right.
Obviously.
So now we go to like more serious questions. Um, Hazib, on the chopping block, episode 998, you said that
yeah.
the Ethereum Foundation shakeup was one of the biggest surprises of 2025. And this is actually for both of you this question. What do you think the old leadership of Ethereum Foundation basically didn't engage well about AI?
Didn't gauge well about AI. I don't know that the failures of the former Ethereum Foundation were so much about AI. I mean, at the time, it was early 24, or no, sorry, early 25 that the Ethereum Foundation shakeup took place. Um, there wasn't a lot to do with AI. I mean, if you think about, when the Opus 4.5 moment happened, that was really, late
Mhm.
last year. That these agents, like the ability for things like OpenClaw to
Mhm.
be consistent and stable enough to be really usable for things like, on-chain activity, only really started around then. So even before then, just having ChatGPT and having Claude as chatbots and search replacements, therapists, those are obviously great use cases, but they weren't really enough to crack a broad swath of applications. So I wouldn't put their failings around AI. I think it's more just around traditional governance of Ethereum itself and being able to actually focus on the technological and scaling roadmap that I think now you see them underscoring much more than they did under the previous leadership.
Yeah, kind of agree with that. Before, the only thing I heard about agents from Ethereum was Vitalik's post about AI agents, and that was all. There was nothing like being done on the ground per se. But yeah, more failure was probably on the governance side. The recent post around the role of L2s in Ethereum ecosystem, I think it's a positive step.
Okay. So this is also for you both. Do you think that crypto wasn't designed for humans, or like it was designed more for machines than for humans, like serving more purpose?
Yeah. So the way that I put this is that, like, if you think about the early users of Ethereum, or the early adopters of Ethereum, and for Bitcoin to some extent, but Ethereum more than anything, there was always a story that people are going to use smart contracts as a general purpose tool for making agreements. And that these are better than traditional contracts, right? Because they're fully specified, they're deterministic, they're extremely clear and easy to understand. And in principle, this is true. But in practice, people don't tend to trust smart contracts. They tend to be very scared of them because they can have bugs, they can make mistakes. And who interprets the smart contract? The answer is the EVM interprets them. Whereas for a normal contract, a human interprets them. A judge interprets a normal contract. And we have a lot more confidence that another human is going to rectify any weird bugs in the contract. But we have no confidence that the EVM is going to do so. So I think the right way to understand it is that, the early users of Ethereum, they were kind of all, they were all programmers. And so they all assumed that, well, obviously everyone's going to read the source code and everyone's going to understand it, right? Because the early users of Ethereum were all kind of autistic programmer types. And most humans are not autistic programmers. And so therefore they don't look at the code and say, aha, clearly I understand this and trust it more than I would trust a contract written in English. The difference, of course, is that AI agents are a lot more similar to autistic programmers than they are to normal human beings. And so that's why I think, in a way, the mental model that the early creators of Ethereum had for human behavior actually maps on almost perfectly to what AI agents ended up becoming. And so Claude is much more similar to Vitalik than it is similar to me. And that's why I think Claude is a natural user for Ethereum, the way in which it was originally imagined that it would be, which is why I say that I think actually these things are better built for agents than they are built for humans.
All right.
Yeah, just to add to that, so I would say for simple stuff like doing swaps or like sending tokens from one account to other, it's more of a UX issue and incentives probably. There haven't ever been right incentives to create a good UX that reaches out to everyone out there. So the UX is kind of shitty, but you can solve that to some extent. But whenever you want to do anything complicated, interacting with different kinds of smart contracts, interacting with multiple contracts at once, doing complex transactions takes care of multiple smart contracts, then the UX kind of breaks. There's only one screen, so much you can do. And for all those kind of workflows, you need different UX, then UX optimization there. But for an agent, it can just interact with the code. For it, it's easier to read than English itself. So you can chain a lot of things. You can abstract out a lot of stuff. So for doing simple stuff, I think a UI could still work, but it has a upper limit that reaches pretty quickly. But agent you can do everything.
Okay. So the one before last. How do you see generalist AI models developing now that we're seeing the potential for lots of specialist AI agents being like world class? Like we see a lot of specialist AI agents basically very performant. How do you think this will affect generalist models?
What you may see is more ensembling, where a generalist model is able to direct a specialist model that is fine-tuned for a particular use case. So right now we have this perception that it's going to be LMs all the way down. And that may not be true. It may be that, for blockchain environments, actually you have a much more limited model that's actually navigating the blockchain. For something like for programming, the thing is, because programming, it basically happens in English. We sort of don't think about it that way, but it's basically true, is that like programs are written in something that looks like English. There are comments in English. The way that we name variables is extremely dependent on understanding language in order to understand interrelationships between code. That's a lot less true actually of blockchains if you sort of look at them in the right way. They do contain code, but actually the state space is much more constrained than general purpose programming. And so it may well be that there are specialized models for doing some of these blockchain type tasks. In which case, your agent will call a blockchain specialized agent as a sub-agent and have it do the blockchain stuff. And that may, it may well be that over time we have super, super intelligent models that are really big and very expensive. And so there will be a natural kind of economic selection pressure to learn this specialization and say, okay, big task coordinates among all the agents that can do the small tasks and double checks their work, but doesn't actually do the original, sort of the first pass over solving the problem.
Yep. And just to add to that, I think a lot of capabilities might be abstracted out as tools. LLMs are generative models, but a lot of times you don't need to generate stuff. You kind of already know the output space, and you only need to choose whether I have to take decision X or decision Y. And in those cases, discriminative models tend to perform well, and they are simpler, more explainable. So you could have like 10 different discriminative models underneath, and AI could choose which one I needed right now, and it could probably call all of them, see what their outputs are, and then decide based on the current market conditions what it should be doing. So you could have different discriminative models of identifying if this is a malicious link or if this is a malicious smart contract, and then it can use that data to make its decision. So not everything has to be encoded into the LLMs themselves. They could even create those tools at runtime. So it might just create an ML model at that time and use it to figure out if something is what it thinks it is. And so yeah, a lot of things might be abstracted out as tools, and it might be one big general model.
All right. So before we go to the last questions, one of the team members asked me in a fun way if I can ask you guys if you will challenge each other to a trade-in agent versus agent to generate data.
Challenge each other to a trade? Yeah, wait, what does this mean?
Yeah, basically just like trade-in data. I'm guessing like the B2C trade wars we had before, but I had to ask the question.
I mean, we could have something like give your insights to an agent, and those agents play poker against each other. I wouldn't want to do that with Haseeb. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a legend.
I think if it's playing poker, I think my agent will have an advantage. If it's trading, I don't know that I'm a very good trader, so I think my agent might be shit out of luck.
I think you're great. All right, the last question for both. Finish this sentence. The main thing that crypto projects still didn't get about AI is? Tough one.
Yeah, I would say that it's going to completely change what your user experience is going to be like.
Yeah. I mean, kind of exactly similar. It kind of totally changes how users interact with on-chain or like anything in general. You can completely change that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you think that your future customer is going to be agents and not humans, it also changes the competitive dynamics between how different protocols are going to be competing with each other. So it's difficult to think about, and also you sort of can't get too far ahead of it, right? You can't assume that that's the world you're living in today. You're going to lose market share if you start, focusing on your LLMs.txt instead of focusing on your actual user experience. So we should, at some point, we're going to call, instead of calling it UX, we're going to call it HX, which is going to be human experience rather than user experience. But like you sort of, right now we are living in the future, right? We are at the vanguard of the vanguard. We're playing around with these tools when they're not really ready yet for prime time, when they're still only early adopters. This is like, people who are on Usenet. This is sort of, the very, very early internet when most people still had never even heard of it. So
Mhm.
it's important to recognize that. It's valuable to be at the frontier and to get a view of where it's all going. But you also can't fool yourself that it's already here or that this is the final form, because
Mhm.
almost certainly those two things will evolve as we get closer and closer to the mass adoption moment.
Yeah, can't follow that. I think we should just end it here.
Awesome. So we arrived at the end of the hour. This was amazing, amazing session. Thank you, Haseeb, for joining us, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And for everybody, please follow him and follow Dragonfly. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Shashank, as well.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Haseeb. Really enjoyed it.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.